welcome traders. I'm doing this on a Saturday, so this is my week ahead. What my watch list is, I'm looking at it as Saturday, but this should be applicable for Monday through till Friday, and this is for Monday the 7th of February 2022. So just going straight into the fundamental concerns, we've got ongoing ones. We've got just there's no updated figures confirming what the closed US inflation is for January for the US. I'm just interested in that. So the latest one is 7% for December last year. Obviously, ongoing concerns with Russia continually attempting to invade Ukraine and trying to find an excuse for doing that, which will escalate global tensions, and is actually, by the way, contributing obviously to the energy crisis. So there are some connections there. The energy crisis being another factor that we're concerned with prices rising there as well, costs going up, especially in Europe as well. And then, of course, autocracy, fascism on the rise. Very interesting if you start to look at how democracy is under attack globally. This is obviously a major concern. It's just, I guess, this is just the way we go. No updates or anything to do with the Swiss National Bank and EURUSD. And the general global markets bubble, have a look at the charts. Not necessarily a concern at this time, still not necessarily a concern. Let's go and have a look and see what's happening there. I just thought it was of interest having a look at the state of democracy, seeing the US now having dropped. This is actually in 2020, I beg your pardon. So 2022, I think it's likely to have dropped well below this, just looking that it's quite far down the list and qualified or categorized as a flawed democracy compared to, say, its neighbor, which is Canada, which is number 5. And so these are more healthy democracies. I just thought that was quite interesting. Here's the UK for reference. Yeah, so certainly the United States is dropping very fast and very quickly down the list in terms of what qualifies as an actual democracy. Let's go and have a look at what else we've got. So in terms of economic Canada news this week, not a lot. So compared to last week, which actually really wasn't that bad. It was actually fantastic. It was a good profitable week trading. Just having a look here. Really just Thursday, got some US news coming out, CPI core, which will add some volatility there. And then really probably just discussions around concerns if there's any need for inflation or rate hikes, which there probably are going to be. So there's a number of different things that are causing moves in the market at the moment. They're not necessarily just correlated with each other. The energy crisis is tied to particular, tensions with Russia and Ukraine, and then we've also got rate hikes, but there's also spending increasing and quality of life has improved in some cases. So there's a lot of very interesting things as opposed to being very, very simple, which we wish it could always be simple, but it isn't. All right, let's go to the charts and have a look and see what else is going on there. Okay, so having a look, starting off with the VIX. Now, I mean, I know with a lot of potentially scary things going on out there, it's really not about, I'm not trying to create this sort of, this kind of environment or climate of fear, not at all, and panic, not at all. We live in a very complex planet with a lot of people on it, and so these kind of things happen. And what I want to do here is talk about how things are going despite all of that, really. Just having a look at the last week, so although we had a lot of really big swings, at least in the markets on the charts, there wasn't really a big change here in terms of volatility. And so there's not, as we go through my different weekly videos here, although we get bigger moves here and there doesn't really seem to be a very clear crystal correlation between what this chart does and what we see coming out of the markets. Last week we had a lot of news, and actually the volatility wasn't that bad, but there were big moves in the market. Okay, so I don't want to get too hung up on that chart as though it's some kind of a crystal ball. It's not. So looking at the US dollar index here. So now it's not often where I kind of call things wrong, but here a big reversal having broken out and me going, look, I was now expecting the US dollar's kind of dollar index here at least is free to continue higher, and it pulled back in. It's not so much a surprise as in how currencies act these days, but it would have been nice to just, again, I want us to get outside of this kind of range. I want to see a longer term kind of commitment, and we're just obviously not there yet. So that's a big kind of reversal, and so we're back within this range effectively. And so what does that mean? It means, well, yes, we could see price pull back up to 96, but we're going to see a ping pong between these levels. And so I'm just going to move on to the individual majors and see how they're looking. We've got, the euro dollar we had NFP yesterday, phenomenal jobs numbers coming out. Biden is just incredible in terms of what he's doing, in terms of injecting cash into the right parts of the economy, and it's starting to reflect itself. So the jobs numbers looking really, really good, which is another sign of why it isn't necessarily, it doesn't really make sense that we would necessarily have a massive recession right now at this time. It's not necessarily something that we could take for granted. My point being that dollar would expect. You would expect it to be relatively strong. And at the same time, I'm always had those fears of it being range bound. And so therefore, this could change the whole of next week. This could end up climbing down, could get a weaker euro dollar. So I just want to exercise some caution. What I'd like to see is a continuation of break above these highs and then move to the upside. So what I was looking for the last week was pullbacks into this area, then looking for a continuation to the downside. There was no continuation. It basically just moved to the upside. So day traders would have probably have then not really, they would have traded this initial move back up to this area, and then there were no real obvious moves that it was going to break higher. And this is where we are at the moment. So now it needs a bit of a correction and perhaps a continuation on the side. So it's really more, we have to see, play it as it lies to see how it's going to go. We've effectively got no clear trends in a lot of these areas. We've got a downtrend here on cable on the weekly, but now it's sitting here going, okay, well, we've got a high lows that is swing low. What's going to happen? So it is going to have to be one of those ones where you're going to, it's not offering clear direction before at the start of the week about where it wants to go. It's one of those ones you're going to find out as the week unfolds, which sounds like an obvious statement. It's not. There are often times the market has said, look, this is where I want to go next week, but it's not doing that right now. So yeah, I think for now I'm going to expect Aussie dollar to potentially come back down and test this level again, and cautiously again we've got a bit of a double bottom here on the weekly, so that looks like that wants to move a little bit higher, so we're getting conflicting signals there. Kiwi, a dollar as well, also looks like that's pulled back right back into these lows here, and that looks like a really good area for it to continue down. So ordinarily I'd say, well, yeah, this should be a great continuation trade, nice swing trade, but these days there isn't really a guarantee of that. We've potentially started a bit of a swing low on the weekly, and it wants to go a little bit high. We're not really at the major level, which I've got at 0.6500, so I think I'm going to lean towards that being potentially a nice trade if it does continue to the downside. Dollar yen here is being pressured up towards the high, so there's quite a bit of resistance, and it is being pressured with that. So I'd be looking for longs above that 115 level, or potentially looking for lows if it starts to break below these lows here. So it's just one of those ones where I'm going to have to wait for a little bit of clarity. For example, here looking at dollar Swissy on the weekly, still stuck within a range all over the place, very volatile, and it looks at this point in time as though it's producing high lows, high highs, and it wants to hit up, which supports the idea of a stronger US dollar still, even though we got a weaker US dollar. So then we've got dollar CAD, also looks like that wants to climb a little bit higher, and that is producing higher lows on the weekly. It's got a major level here at 1.28, breaks through that again. Of course, so far it's an uptrend. It is in an uptrend. It looks like it's supporting a stronger US dollar. So dollar yen, dollar Swissy, dollar CAD all look like they want to see go a little bit higher, supporting a stronger US dollar. Aussie dollar, Kiwi dollar also hitting lower, supporting a stronger US dollar. So there's a lot of signals here that, despite potentially, we'll have to see how the euro looks, but that we're seeing a stronger US dollar at this point in time, even though when we look at dollar index, it's actually looking quite weak. Interesting. Okay, so moving on to the cross pairs of interest. Okay, so I'm going to run through these relatively quickly. So this does explain, when we look here, we can see the strength of this euro dollar. So I'm going to run through euro GBP, had a big boost last couple of days of last week. Euro yen also breaking up here, breaking these previous highs, looking very strong and bullish. Now overextended on a 4-hourly time frame. So any kind of pullbacks, there could be good continuation opportunities. Euro Swissy also really strong double bottom there with bullish divergence, break above this, looking very nice and bullish. Still in a downtrend on the monthly, and therefore this could be just part of a retracement up into those lows, but still looking strong and bullish. Euro CAD as well, really strong bullish candle there as well. So this is clearly, euro had a good week last week. It's produced a high lows, not a high here, but also looking nice and strong and bullish on Euro Aussie. Euro Kiwi, very, very strong. Certainly now becoming overextended on the daily, a little bit overextended on the weekly. It's broken through these strong levels of resistance. And monthly there, no clear trend. It's broken that downtrend, but also looking particularly bullish. So Euro QE, I do very much like the look of. Euro pairs looking very strong. So pullbacks in the 4-hour could be good for buying opportunities here. Then just running through the GBP pairs, the one that I really like the most is coming across this pound Kiwi. So pound Kiwi's got a really nice structure on the daily. It's becoming a little bit overextended on that weekly. So certainly there is a possibility of a pullback here, but overall this is just a really, really nice optimal price action structure. And so I quite like the look of that. Pound Aussie also looking sort of potentially more bullish there. So Euro Aussie looking very good. Prefer Euro Aussie over Pound Aussie, but Pound Kiwi looking particularly good. And then finishing up here on Aussie Kiwi. Aussie Kiwi also nice and bullish, coming back into the lower highs here. This is a good area for it to potentially continue onwards, but that weekly looking a little bit sort of failing a little bit there, and that monthly just a complete mess. So on second thoughts, possibly pass on that. And then let's have a look. Aussie Swissy, anything here? There's a little bit of weakness in Aussie pairs, but right now the Euro pairs are looking the most attractive to me. So Kiwi CAD, strong moves to the downside, a little bit overextended on the weekly, potentially producing a swing low here and might end up coming back up to that 86 level to do a continuation. So that means shorter term moves to the upside for day traders until it gets up to that next level and potentially continuations to the downside. QB Swissy also here really struggling in this particular area. It's got to break through that level. So there could be a breakout to the downside once it commits to doing that. QB Yen. Okay, not seeing a lot of clarity here. CAD Yen, just a mess. Look at that. That's just a nightmare, which means your 4 hours a nightmare. So not a lot going on there. Swissy Yen as well, not offering clarity. So the winners, and certainly top on my list this week, Euro pairs and then Pound Kiwi. Really liking the look of those. All right, so let's move on to the commodities and have a look at those. Okay, so having a look at the GSCI, we can see generally that strong continuation, nice, strong, healthy trend. Now certainly becoming a bit overextended on that weekly time frame, that monthly starting to push on. Overall, this is part of where we're seeing that increase in prices. Let's have a look at gold, precious metals. It's no strong trend. That weekly is a big mess as well. So what does it mean? Well, it does mean, as I said, I was saying last week, still bullish on this, especially once we break above that 1810 level. So I'll be looking for it, but the moves don't necessarily seem to go for that long, and then perhaps there's a deep correction. It is creeping high, but it's very, very messy. Not the most attractive thing I've ever seen. And then silver as well, largely drifting a little bit sideways. So, so far, not on my list for this coming week. Just very messy in that respect. Copper the same. This daily chart is an absolute nightmare, and the weekly chart is also an absolute nightmare. So not really a lot happening there. I've introduced natural gas. So the reason I want to do that is just show natural gas here as well. Although it's had a bit of a boost going through in January, it's got a very strong rejection candle in February. I want to see if we follow through on that. Do we break the low of that, head back down towards the lows, or does it just disregard it? But there's certainly a lot of failure in this area, and that's quite interesting. It's also a rejection weekly candle, rejection monthly candle so far. It's a little bit early in the month to call it, but that's certainly what it looks like. Moving on to West Texas crude oil, very, very strong. So this is very similar to the GSCI. Obviously, they make up, they are the constituents in amongst those other commodities, but you can see here very strong and very bullish. Not showing much failure here. I can't see why it wouldn't head up to $100. Certainly is within sight. That 4 hour, the lower time frames also looking particularly good. Brent crude having experienced a nice little consolidation and a breakout. So at some point I'll be expecting a bit of a pullback here, but that might even be next week. I can see a little bit of a swing high starting here on the 4 hours. So pullbacks here could be good for continuations to the upside. That these candles are very nice and full body, closing near the highs. Overall, at this time, still signaling healthy and kind of aggressiveness towards the upside, or appetite for the upside. Sugar continues to be messy. Not really loving it. I know I do include it on this list, but it doesn't really deserve to be here. It's pulled back into this area. It's now moved into a nice longer-term bullish move. This is a really good area for it to turn around and start heading back up towards 20, but it's not beautiful for trading purposes. Coffee continues to push at the highs, even though it's showing some failure and exhaustion here. It keeps pushing. So this is going to be similar to some of the equities we've looked at over the last few months, where ultimately it's going to fail. It'll start having a correction, but there's no sign of that just yet. It's just, again, also concerned when it comes to it breaking through those new highs, and for trading, not really that attractive. Wheat continues to fail here. It's also in a good area here where it can potentially take another run up at 1800, but now it's produced a sort of not a lower high on the weekly. There's no clear trend here at this point in time. It's got a level of support, around 740. If it breaks that, then I would expect to see it head a lot lower. It's just trying to get through this level of 800. It's trying to push through that. Cotton trending very, very well. Absolutely, certainly overextended on a monthly basis. Does need a bit of a correction there. That weekly looks okay, starting to show a little bit of depletion in this area. So again, from last week, still expecting some kind of a pullback at some point. And the daily looking as though it's encountered some strong resistance here at 127.70. So some potential pullback here. Overall, just trading it until it ultimately does run out of steam. And then moving on to the global indices. So what I was looking for this week that's just gone by, as I was looking to see if we saw a bit of a follow through from the bullish candles we got last week, and to see if we could continue. So we've actually got that typical mixed signal. We did break higher, and we finished a little bit lower. So it's not really seeing it across most of the other charts, but specifically, certainly in the US indices, they really are struggling to go a little bit higher. And there is a possibility here that if we are going to do a bigger correction, or we haven't recovered from this one, we haven't let off enough steam yet, this is a really good area and a really good time for it to do that. So for me, the first clues will be if we can move up from here this week and break these highs. In other words, we continue a daily trend to the upside. I've put in a trend line not for the traditional purposes of a trend line, but merely to measure a bit of a wall there, so I can see if it starts to breach the wall, so it starts to look more bullish than bearish. But that weekly candle could ultimately actually go either way. It's an attempt and a failure. It could really go either way. Generally speaking, I tend to be optimistic with the markets. That tends to pay off better, but this is a failed attempt in my mind. It's not a complete rejection, but it is an attempt. I'd like to see it attempt again and close above these levels. So this being the S&P, and that monthly area just producing a bit of an indecision candle. If it closes as a nice bullish candle in February, then that's a really nice sign for me. And so taking a case in point, the Nasdaq, which is getting hit the hardest, obviously this recent week, Meta came out, Facebook kind of fell on its face, I think, and so that's had a little bit of an impact here, it being one of the FANG, and so this is a potentially currently, and it's early days again, could ultimately be a continuation candle. This is a real failure, a rejection of that 15,000 level. So this week, I think what potentially is likely to happen, and this is not offering very clear signals, is it is going to attempt to push higher. We'll see if it can. So I'd need to see this daily break a little bit higher. If it does break this low and start to break these lows, I become bearish. If we can break above these highs, then I reintroduce some optimism there to see this to climb back up to 15.7. Okay, so mini Russell as well. So you can see here it's really struggling to get back up on the weekly, to come back up and test this for resistance, or even break a little bit further than that. But it is in a good area here where it could still potentially turn around. This has been a fantastic holiday that it's been on. It hasn't gone anywhere since January 2021, so over a whole year. This would be a really good area for it now that it's let off some steam to continue back up and then ultimately break through that 2350 level. So I guess what I'm looking for this week is we've had a pullback, we've got a continuation here, is to see if we do break these lows or if we break these highs. So this is a good place for it to break these highs here. Then I start to become more bullish to see it head up to these levels. Alternatively, if it just continues down and breaks the lows, then I remain bearish on that. The FTSE, so moving away from the US, the FTSE here just struggling with some good, strong resistance. I'm just going to mark that, but there's no doubt that it is struggling with some resistance here. There's a little bit of it's being affected a bit by what's going on in the US as well. And so that monthly candle is a little bit of an indecision candle. It's managed to break through and go through to new all-time highs, which I like. This is a very weird indecision candle here in terms of that. It's a good, strong rejection. If it had closed higher, it would be a good bullish sign, but it's closed near the alt open, and therefore it's not really a strong continuation of a strong continuation signal. So the DAX looking now as though it wants to head back down to the lows of this range, and for me the question will be, will it this week then break out of that range and come down? So until it breaks out of the range, doesn't count. So I want to see if it's going to break down and head lower. Okay, but it's certainly in the short term, it could head down to this lower level, and then, or that's where it looks like it is intending to go, and then it could bounce off those and stay back within that range. So I want to see if the rest of the markets do close higher, that'll be the case. It'll bounce off those lows. Euro stocks as well here, looking like complete indecision, bit of a rejection off here, then an attempt up and a failure. I'm more inclined to see that this might potentially head down and test these lows. Sometimes the markets are very clear with their intentions. Currently, they are trying to go higher and failing, but not failing a lot, just failing enough that they're not telling you if they've got enough energy to keep going or if they're now going to just give up and head the other way. Nikkei, again, the Nikkei producing a bit of a bullish candle here. It's desperately trying to stay above this level of support. So this week, I want to see if we can do that. It is in a downtrend on the weekly. Can it get back up and break this or break these highs? Alternatively, if it's going to continue down, it's then going to start to head back down to these lower levels. And all of these will be quite telling. Again, from one perspective in isolation, these are potential green shoots to show nice recovery to go all the way up to the top. But it just requires, I need a bit more time to see how the market's going to respond to this. So that's why initially I'm looking to see if the market, for example, here on the ASICs can come back up, break through this potential area of resistance, get back up above it and find some support if it's going to fail, or if it's going to fail and then come back down. But this is a setup. This is a potential bullish setup. And as I said, I'd like to remain optimistic on that. Okay, so moving on now to the equities of interest. Okay, so having a look at the equities of interest, and actually I also should say that occasionally I know that my voice, the recording goes strangely sort of tinning
tinny and then sort of goes back to normal. And I really never know what causes this because there's no change. I literally have the headset on and then I speak and then then I can't hear. It sounds fine on my side and then it's tinny and then it just goes normal. So I really don't know what it is. I don't touch anything. I don't change anything. I apologize. Maybe I have to get the headset replaced or something that's brand new, but maybe I have to send it in and get it fixed. Who knows? Let's move on and just have a look at this. So when the markets are giving unclear signals, then I would either trade a shorter, faster moving time frame, so I could trade just trade it as it unfolds. Alternatively, I stay away. I wait and I give time until it starts to reveal what its intentions are. So having a look here at Royal Mail, this certainly does look like it wants to head lower. You know, it just looks red across kind of in most of these charts. As I said, it's a lower high here. There's no reason why this couldn't head down towards 400 there. Then Amex. So Amex has had actually a really, really good week, but it's got some potential resistance here. So I'm going to mark that as potential. It's not enough information at this time to show that it is actual resistance. There's a little bit of a rejection there, but not enough. This could easily just slice through. Any kind of pullbacks into this area and a continuation is feasible. I would say, though, that excluding that for the time being, everything looks nice and bullish. And actually, that was a really strong finish to a degree. Could be a bit of a pullback from that. Let's have a look at Apple. So Apple, overall, that weekly looking pretty good. A little bit of a failure there, so you can see that's part of what shows up. That's contributed to a bit of that depletion in the Nasdaq as well. Overall, that monthly here showing, you could sort of argue this a bit of a hanging man. It looks like it wants to take a bit of a breather, but there's no doubt it's struggling where it is, and any kind of a pullback, to me, at least in my mind, is a good thing, but not seeing initial setups here. It's a downtrend, but it's come back up to this level of resistance. It could go either way, actually, but I think it's potentially going to head lower. ARK Innovation. So ARK here really on the weekly is where I think a lot of this is at. It's trying to go back up. It's in a good area. This is what this box is. This is a good area for me where I'm looking to see if this level holds and it can stay above that and finish with a nice bullish candle, which to me would signal the potential turning point where the market's going to head back up, or at least up where this ETF is going to head up to 100. And so I'm looking to see if that's the case. I would have been very confident of that if I had seen this close at the highs. It hasn't actually. So this could just consolidate for a bit and we'll see how that goes. It could break through, and if it does break through, it's going to head back down towards these lower highs here, down towards 50. And of course, then I feel the pain, so it's not really that great. But it is what it is. So, and I know that's a bit of an expression as well, not necessarily the best one. So, AT&T attempted a bit of a recovery there, got knocked back, not looking super strong now. So, for now, I think it's more likely that 23, 24 is going to be in the near future. If they break back down below this, 22, 21, and below that is then potentially the future they can't hold above that. Berkshire Hathaway, almost identical to Apple. In fact, that's possibly even a big reason for this, has pulled back, tested this level of support and continuation and a bit of depletion there. So this is a bit of a struggle and a little bit of an inside spinning top happening there. So all of that just indicating that it's not offering any clarity. It's not certain candles are continuation, meaning this is much more likely to just keep going whichever direction it's at. BP. So we know already that BP and Exxon are going to be quite nice and bullish for this time being. That's a pullback on the weekly and a continuation for that. So nice and bullish there. Exxon, let's just go see that. That's broken through that band of resistance, broken through these highs. These highs are from 2014. All of that now starting to show, look, I do need at some point a pullback, but man, right now it's way more bullish than bearish. Coca-Cola, stalling a little bit, indecision there. Weekly looks okay, but offering a little bit of caution here. So it's quite interesting. Even the ones that are quite bullish have stalled a little bit. They're not looking weak. They just are not, they've taken a little bit of a hit there. General Motors, it's interesting. I need to go back and see what I drew this for, because I was saying that if it broke below that level, then certainly $40 was in its future. That is still the case, but it's still within that range. And that was quite a strong bearish rejection candle. It's attempting to climb and showing quite a bit of depletion there, but this level is still holding. So it's really about, can it manage to recover from that and push back up? But so far, it's still looking like it's going to hover around these levels. We'll see how that goes. JP Morgan Chase, just dipped its toe below that level. I've actually got it marked here as a potential buy area. I quite like the look of this overall. So that level could potentially still hold. I'm quite optimistic about that. Let's see how that goes. It is actually technically a downtrend, lower highs, lower lows. And this is a good area for it to potentially see a rejection to the downside. I'll be very surprised. It's unlikely that if most of these have a really bad week this coming week, it's very surprising to me that even the ones that are showing some green shoots now would still continue to do that.
I think it's unlikely that they would. Now, Meta to me is very interesting because to some degree, I wonder how much of this is a sign of its general loss of kind of popularity. Now, if you remember, and this is just a minor, I think this is interesting market discourse. Facebook was originally about connecting people. That's what it was. And that's not the customer base now. The customer base now are corporate clients and businesses who mine that data and try to get access to that and offer those products. But that's really the predominant thing. And what Meta's trying to do is just keep people engaged. And people are struggling to stay engaged. But they still have, almost 2 billion people. That's just almost a full quarter of the planet that is, members that are members of it. But people are leaving that I know of, at least anecdotally, people are leaving. I guess my point is, it's interesting to me that in my mind, Facebook was there originally as a great tool of connection to sharing our lives with each other. And that's not at all how the business is based. The business is based off they make the income through advertising and through other businesses targeting us as users. I find that really interesting, as opposed to us being we're effectively, if you think about it, the baby in the bathwater or the goose that lays the golden egg. Just interesting. That's all. I'd love to hear your feedback or opinions or thoughts on that, by the way. And you certainly don't have to agree with me. If you don't, I'd be interested in it anyway. Morgan Stanley, really strong, but still range bound. All of this, it's creeping right near the top. And yes, that's a possibility. It can break out to the upside, but it's not a guarantee. This is still an inside spinning top as well. Could potentially fail there. I'd need to see that break out above and close above that level, to really feel that faith in it. So for all the ones that are looking bullish, still aren't safe in my mind. NVIDIA having coming back into a really good area here, potentially to do a bit of a turn on that monthly, and showing similar attempt to climb and then closing a little bit lower. It's an uptrend on the daily, so I need to see it break these highs, break to this level of support to see more bullishness there, or to ultimately see a nice little bullish green candle at the end of February. We're not there yet. We've got Valentine's Day coming up this week. Hope you, ladies and gents, have got your partners all sorted. Lower highs, lower lows. Yeah, so it needs time. All of these need a little bit more time to get some clarity on what their signals are. While, PayPal having fallen through that level, and beautiful break and a retest and a rejection and a continuation, and stopped right at this level where it is. And so that's a big move down, overextended. I do, again, also I feel for any company that's seen some great performance and then given back a huge chunk of it, more than 50%, you can't not feel something there. Especially in my mind, for me, the way in which I use PayPal hasn't changed at all. So having said that, it's coming back into these old highs. This is a good area for it to find some support. So that's what I'm going to be having a look at and see how that happens. But and again, for me to even consider this, if I'm doing this, and again, not financial advice, but something I might do for myself, is I might be buying this once I see a strong bullish candle here. So nothing yet, certainly not for February. It's looking more bearish. I'd need to see a strong rejection or followed by a nice, really strong bullish candle there. Spider. Excuse me, so Spider here has fallen through its level and is now potentially can go down as far as 88, 89, which is where it is now, or if it fails to hold there, back down towards 72, 73. Tesla. So Tesla, I've marked this. These were just comments from me to my friends saying these are two areas where I see this as potential buying points. This is sort of more of a broad one, the blue one, but these two levels being the old highs here, or these further highs down here. If it fails to hold, then I would expect it to come back down towards this area and towards these highs here, or potentially even right down to these lows, 600 down to 550. And that, to me, in my mind, is not a reflection of its future values, but more just of the fact that it's currently overvalued. It can hold where it is. But I'm saying that if it breaks to this, I would expect it to start to certainly test these lows down towards 700, even further down towards 550. And it's just maybe live in interesting times. Let's see what happens there. Vanguard, the last one on my list here. Vanguard having pulled back into the moving averages could very well hold where it is. Absolutely, I think that it should. I'm going to put in a monthly support level there, which is where it's kind of potentially fighting at the moment to hold above that level. Looks good, but this uptrend is now no longer intact. So is it this week? And it's got almost the same shape of candle here that we see on a lot of the weekly charts. And this is, are we going to see a continuation back up to the upside there, or are we going to get a knock? And I'm leaning 55. It's going to try to go higher. And then 55.45 that it's going to fail. But certainly it is so close at this time. Okay, moving on to the Treasuries. You can see they're starting to push, break through these levels of support. They haven't been this week in a long time, meaning they're now in a, confirmed, this is the 10-year confirmed downtrend on the monthly, and it hasn't really been that way for quite a while. Last time it was really in a confirmed downtrend is going back to 2017, 2018. Eurobol broken through that level of support. and heading down to these old highs here, down towards those. So again, I see shorting opportunities on these, certainly not buying opportunities for me, and a break on Eurobond as well, having broken through that level of support, did not hold on that range, and so it's a deeper correction. Interesting to see what that might look like on, say, for example, a quarterly basis. It's now back into this area, but it's looking weaker and weaker and weaker, and I'd have to go back to a yearly basis to see, or go up to a yearly basis. There we go. So now it gives me a target of approximately 150 here, which would be a relatively decent correction for it, but seem quite scary for most people. So go back to that monthly, that 100 level, back down towards here. Okay, so that's going to be interesting. I'll mark that and then move on from that. So that is a potential target down there. So moving on to cryptos. So I fully acknowledge that cryptos can move during the weekend, and therefore these this could change by the time Monday comes around. Absolutely, it's now everyone is cheering because it's back up above 40K. As I spoke about in this initial kind of idea here, that we could produce a higher low here and work our way back up. We could be range bound. There's a separate video that's been done on this. We could be range bound and stay within this range, but we could also be building into a high low setup here, which is a very nice bullish breakout pattern. But again, that means next year, 2023, we'd break out to the upside. So we'll see how that goes. And what I'm looking for is a nice, strong bullish candle here, similar to what we've had here in the past, and then looking to see a continuation and a follow through on that. So far, it looks like it's doing really well. This is interesting to me because if it is correlated with equities, then this could be a sign that next week's actually going to be bullish. If this is that bullish, we could see that being the case. Alternatively, to me, it would be a big surprise if equities, because although I was looking to see if cryptos have now sort of got their own standalone thing going, I think it's too young. I think they're too young. I think it's too early in their lifespan. It might take a few more years before that's the case, but we'll see if it then becomes its own sort of safe haven option. But I think if equities take a really big hit this week, I think this is also going to struggle to not feel some of that pain be shared. Ethereum, having a look over here. So Ethereum also producing a nice little bullish buy signal to me. But again, it's not done yet. We've got to go all the way through to the end of the month. We're 5 days into it. And so I need to see how February closes. Binance, also looking good off that level of support. Solana also beautiful. So for me, I'm very intrigued now. Nice level of support on Cardano. Very intrigued to see where these are. Can we get nice bullish candles for me? I'm going to be very interested in that if we get a close like that for February for me on the cryptos. And also I find it surprising that that might be able to happen without equities also having a bit of a higher close. And so lots of interesting stuff this week. I'm going to be exercising some caution. I will get involved in the direction of those where they have clearer signals, but I'm going to also watch those from the sideline where their signals aren't clear yet. And that's it, ladies and gents. Please have a fantastic week, and I look forward to hearing some feedback from you as well, and also keeping in mind that on 25th of February, which I think is a Friday, I'm speaking at the London Traders Show. So if you are in the area and you want to meet up face to face, it would be fantastic to have a chat, a very quick chat over maybe a quick cup of coffee or something. That's it. Thank you very much, and chat to you next week.